everyone. I'm Kevin Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. Pope Francis celebrated the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ with a Mass outside the Basilica of St. John, Lateran, the Cathedral of the Diocese of Rome. Thousands gathered for the evening Mass and the Corpus Christi procession from St. John, Lateran to the Basilica of St. Mary Major, about a mile away. The Pope met the procession when it arrived at St. Mary Major. Catholic News Service has more on the Pope's words from the Mass and images of the solemn procession.
Nella frenesia in cui siamo immersi, tante persone e tanti fatti sembrano scivolarci addosso. Si gira pagina in fretta, voracci di novità, ma poveri di ricordi. Così, bruciando i ricordi e vivendo all'istante, si rischia di restare in superficie, nel flusso delle cose che succedono, senza andare in profondità.
Looking now at news from around the country, June 20th is World Refugee Day for 2017, a day to celebrate the contributions of refugees occurring locally, nationally, and globally. A statement released by the United States Bishops' Conference called the day an opportunity to raise awareness about the global refugee situation and the success of resettled refugees. The statement went on to say that the world is experiencing the largest forced migration crisis since World War II, with more than 65 million people forcibly displaced from their homes, including 21 million refugees worldwide. Bill Canny, Executive Director of the USCCB's Migration and Refugee Services, said refugees are, like all people, unique children of God. He said he hoped this year's celebration would create greater awareness and appreciation on both the community and national level. This year is the 17th year that the United Nations has officially recognized June 20th as World Refugee Day. In news from around the world, Cardinal Jaime Ortega, the retired Catholic Archbishop of Havana, has called for dialogue between the United States and Cuba and said it's the only way in which past and present problems can be solved. The Cardinal published a letter in the Archdiocese of Havana's magazine, saying in the letter that resorting to old models and applying them presently to Cuba can overshadow or delay the resolution of conflicts between the two countries. The letter is in response to President Trump's recent announcement of changes to U.S. policy toward Cuba, including a rollback of an Obama-era opening of diplomatic relations and an easing of some restrictions. Bishop Oscar Cantu, chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on International Justice and Peace, in a statement, also urged the promotion of dialogue and the continuance of encounter between the two neighboring nations and peoples. Bishop Cantu had a pastoral visit with the Cuban bishops June 17th and said that while serious human rights concerns persist on the island, the USCCB, in solidarity with the bishops of Cuba and the Holy See, has long held that human rights and religious freedom will be strengthened through more engagement between the Cuban and American people, not less. Cardinal Ortega has just released a book chronicling the role the Church played in the 2014 restoration of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the U.S. More news from the Vatican. The Pope is returning to Latin America in 2018. Rome Reports has more on the newly announced plans.
The Vatican has officially announced the Pope's first international trip for 2018. Chile from January 15th to the 18th, and Peru from the 18th through the 21st. Surely this was one of the topics that the Pope spoke about with the bishops of both countries when they visited Rome during their ad limina visits. The Pope met with the bishops from Chile in February and with the Peruvian bishops in May. Pope Francis will therefore return to Latin America without going to his homeland. In Chile, he will visit the capital, Santiago, Temuco, and Iquique. And in Peru, he will pass through Lima, Puerto Maldonado, and Trujillo. It will be the Pope's sixth trip to Latin America. He's already been to Brazil, Ecuador, Bolivia, Paraguay, Cuba, Mexico, and he will visit Colombia in September of this year.
And finally in the news, at the opening of the Rome Diocese annual convention, Pope Francis told priests, religious, catechists, and parish council members that instead of pretending to be adolescents, parents must help young people see the blessing of growing into adulthood. The Pope based his nearly 45-minute address on the convention's theme, "Do not leave them alone," accompanying parents in education and educating adolescent children. The Pope talked about children facing an uprooted culture where people are disconnecting from their roots and feel no sense of belonging. He said making time for children to speak with grandparents can help with the passing on of faith, history, and belonging. The Rome Diocese convention took place in the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Well, that's all the information we have for you this time. I'm Kevin Nelson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week with Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV Network.